I'm Colonel Rachel Morgan, United States Army. 25 years in uniform, 2 tours overseas, more medals and scars than I can count. Yet none of that seemed to matter on the night of my father's wedding when he decided to erase me with a single sentence. He stood at the front of the reception hall, microphone in hand, cheeks red with bourbon and pride, and told the room that his new daughter Lily was the real soldier in the family. Then he looked my way, lifted his glass, and said I was just the one who handled paperwork. The words didn't hit like a slap. They settled into my skin like acid, slow and burning. 100 faces turned in my direction. Some awkward, some curious, some smirking. Forks froze midair. The DJ's music stuttered into silence, and I felt every eye searching for my reaction. I didn't give them one. I didn't flinch, didn't argue, didn't even clear my throat. I set my drink down on the nearest table, nodded to the waiter who looked like he wanted to disappear, and walked out. The hall behind me buzzed back to life as if nothing had happened, but inside me it was a roar, a storm I had learned to bury years ago. My chest tightened like someone had drawn a wire through it. I could still hear my father's voice echoing through the cheap speakers, lifting Lily high, cutting me down lower than dirt. It wasn't the first time he had made me feel like nothing, but it was the first time he'd done it in front of a crowd, with no hesitation and no shame. I stepped into the cool night air, the parking lot lit by buzzing sodium lamps that threw everything in a sick yellow glow. My heels clicked against the asphalt, sharp and steady, the only sound in the stillness. I thought about turning back, about shouting the truth until his glass slipped from his hand and shattered at his feet. But I had worn the uniform too long to forget discipline. Silence has power. Control has power. Walking away had power too. Still, the sting dug deep, settling into my bones where years of his words already lived. I could face war zones without trembling, stand in front of soldiers without fear. But standing in front of my father had always made me feel small. That night, when he crowned Lily the warrior and stripped me of honor in a single breath, I realized nothing I had done for this country would ever matter to him. To Frank Morgan, I would always be his disappointing daughter, a woman with a desk job pretending to wear boots. I didn't cry. I didn't let my jaw shake or my fists clench. I walked out calm, shoulders straight, like I was heading into battle. But inside, something shifted. That night wasn't just another wound. It was the moment I decided I wouldn't let his voice write the story of who I was anymore. He had no idea how wrong he was, and soon, neither would Lily. My mother died when I was 14, and after that, the house no longer felt like home. My father filled it with rules that sounded more like orders, and every one of them seemed designed to remind me that I would never measure up. He praised toughness in boys, he praised silence in men, but when it came to me, there was only criticism and disappointment. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with enlistment papers in front of me, the ink still wet from my signature. I thought he would see courage, maybe even pride, but instead he slammed his fist on the table and asked if I wanted to be nothing more than a file clerk in uniform. He said no real man would ever brag about a daughter who carried clipboards instead of rifles. That moment carved a line between us that never healed. I left home carrying both the sting of his words and the determination to prove them wrong. Every rank I earned, every deployment I survived, and every soldier I trained was a step away from his shadow. But no matter how far I rose, the memory of his rejection stayed with me, sharp and heavy. That is why his insult at the wedding did not just bruise me. It cut into scars that had been there for decades, reminding me that in his eyes I would always be less. The night air hit me harder than any insult could. The parking lot stretched out empty, under flickering lights, each lamp buzzing, like it was the only witness to what had just happened inside. My footsteps echoed on the cracked asphalt, steady but heavy, as if each step carried the weight of all the years my father had tried to shrink me down to nothing. I reached my car and stood there for a long moment, hand on the keys, chest tight. Part of me wanted to drive away and never look back. Another part wanted to march back into that hall, dressed in full blues, medals gleaming, and let him choke on the truth in front of every guest he had just fed a lie. My hand trembled as I popped the trunk. Inside, hung the uniform that told the story my father refused to speak. The fabric was still crisp, the brass polished, the ribbons lined in perfect order, each one earned through grit and sacrifice. At the center sat the bronze star, small but heavy with meaning, proof that I had stood where others could not. I brushed my fingers over the metal, the cool metal pressing against my skin like a reminder of battles won. For a second, I imagined putting it on right there under the buzzing lights, walking back into that cheap banquet hall, and watching every smug smile fall away. I wanted him to see the soldier he had dismissed. I wanted them all to see, but I let the garment bag fall closed again, shutting the truth back into silence. I told myself it wasn't the right moment. Not yet. A uniform carries weight, and weight deserves timing. So I shut the trunk, stood tall in the shadows, and let the anger settle into something sharper. My father could call me paperwork all he wanted. The truth was folded in that bag, waiting for the day it would speak louder than he ever could. The letter came to me in a plain envelope, postmarked from Arizona, the handwriting jagged and familiar. I stared at it for a long time before opening it, almost wishing I could throw it away and never know what it said. But curiosity and old wounds made my fingers tear it open. Inside was my father's voice, not in person, not on the phone, but in ink. He wrote that he had another daughter now, Lily. She wanted to apply to West Point, and he was scared she might not measure up. He asked me, of all people, to use my connections, to help her find a way through the system. I read the words twice, then 3 times, not because I didn't understand them, but because the hypocrisy stung so badly it felt unreal. This was the same man who once called me a disgrace for enlisting. The same man who told me a woman in logistics was nothing more than dead weight. And now, years later, he wanted me to open the gate for his new daughter. I wanted to tear the letter in half. I wanted to write back and tell him no, to remind him of every cruel word he had thrown at me. But instead, I folded the paper carefully and slipped it into my desk drawer. I didn't do it for him. I didn't even do it for me. I did it for her. I opened her application file, scanned her scores, and saw the red mark that could have ended her chances. A failed 2-mile run, 1 minute too slow. On paper, it was enough to disqualify her. In my hands, it was a detail I had the authority to interpret. I didn't erase it. I didn't falsify her record. I simply removed the comment that flagged her as unfit. It was a small adjustment, one that left the numbers intact, but cleared the obstacle from her path. No one would ever know the difference. No one except me. When I closed her file, I told myself it would be just this once. Just one small mercy. Lily would never know who made that call, and my father would never thank me for it. But I knew. I knew that while he saw me as nothing, I had given his new daughter a chance he never gave me. It was a bitter kind of kindness, the kind that comes from loving someone who will never love you back. The roster landed on my desk, with the usual stack of new assignments. I skimmed down the list, name after name, until one stopped me cold. Second Lieutenant Lily Morgan. My eyes locked on it, and for a moment I thought I was imagining things. But there it was, printed in black ink, attached to my unit, and placed directly under my command. I sat back in my chair, the paper trembling slightly between my fingers. Of all the officers, of all the programs, she had been sent to me. The same Lily my father praised as his pride and joy, the same girl he paraded in front of me while dismissing my entire career, was now mine to evaluate, mine to train, mine to hold accountable. The irony was sharp enough to cut. When she arrived on base, she walked into the room with her chin high, her uniform pressed crisp, and a confidence that looked more like performance than experience. She introduced herself smoothly, polished from rehearsed lines, and carried herself like someone who had been told her whole life she was destined for greatness. I gave her a nod, kept my own name to myself, and let her believe what she wanted to believe. Over the next week, I watched her from a distance. She was quick to talk about her background, her father's career, and the rules he had drilled into her since childhood. She liked to drop his name into conversations as if it carried weight in every room. And she spoke about me too, though she didn't know it. I heard her laugh softly once and say the colonel in charge of her program was old school, the kind who shuffled papers more than she led soldiers. The others listened politely, some nodding, some unsure. No one corrected her. I kept silent, because silence can hold more power than shouting. But every word landed in my chest like a spark against dry tinder. She thought she was speaking about a stranger, some faceless officer hidden behind doors and rank. She had no idea she was mocking her own sister. At night, I pulled her file again, reading it line by line. Her scores were solid, her record clean, but I saw the details no one else would notice. Small gaps, overlooked notes, hints of corners cut. I had covered one of those flaws myself years ago when I let her application slide past a failing mark. She didn't know she owed her place here to me, and I wasn't about to tell her, not yet. I carried that secret like a weight, listening to her boast, watching her charm the others with easy smiles. She thought she was untouchable, thought she had walked into the army on her own merit. What she didn't realize was that her story was already tied to mine, stitched together in ways she hadn't begun to understand. And sooner or later, she would. The news broke on a quiet Monday morning. A mission I had led years ago in Afghanistan, one buried under classification and silence, was finally cleared for release. The bulletin boards lit up with my picture in full combat gear. Helmet pushed back, dirt smeared across my face, eyes fixed like steel. Soldiers stopped in hallways to stare. Screens in the mess hall replayed the photo, captioned with the words Colonel Rachel Morgan, Operation Lead, 93% recovery rate. By Thursday, the recognition ceremony was set. Rows of uniforms filled the parade field, the air sharp with the smell of pressed fabric and polished boots. I walked to the podium in my dress blues, the medals heavy on my chest, the bronze star glinting under the morning sunday. From the front row, I caught Lily's face. Her laughter stalled, her jaw tightened, and her eyes widened as if the ground had shifted beneath her. She wasn't looking at a faceless officer anymore. She was staring at her sister, the same one she had mocked, the same one her father had dismissed. I let the silence stretch before I spoke. My voice carried steady, no notes in my hand, no script needed. Honor isn't applause, it's how you move when no one's clapping. The words rolled across the field and sank into every ear. I stepped back, saluted, and left the moment to speak for itself. The morning was cold enough to bite through skin, the kind of chill that made every breath visible. The track glistened with dew under the floodlights, and the air carried the sharp edge of discipline. Lily stood at the starting line, shoulders tense, eyes forward, trying to look unshaken but betraying nerves in the way she shifted her weight. I stood a few paces back, clipboard in hand, watching, silent. The whistle cut the air and she launched forward. Her first lap was strong, her stride long and measured, but by the halfway mark her pace wavered. I saw the stumble in her knee, the hitch in her breathing, and the temptation in her eyes to look for a shortcut. This time, there was none. My presence at the edge of the track made sure of it. Each lap dragged more from her. Her face reddened, sweat ran into her eyes, and her form grew ragged. But she didn't quit. She gritted her teeth and kept pushing, arms pumping, legs fighting the pull to slow. Around her, the world shrank down to the sound of her own breath and the pounding of boots on wet pavement. By the final stretch, she was nearly collapsing with each step. The clock ticked past 15 minutes, closing in on failure. But then something broke through the fatigue. She found one last surge, a desperate burst that carried her across the line just under the standard. She stumbled forward, knees giving way, hands clawing at the grass, as if the ground itself was holding her down. The sergeant checked his watch, then looked at me. 15:34. Passed. His voice was flat, but I caught the flicker of surprise in his eyes. I didn't move to help her up. I let her push herself to her feet, unsteady but upright, chest heaving like her lungs were on fire. She looked at me, waiting, uncertain. Stripped of her usual confidence, I stepped closer, my voice calm but firm. From today, you're not someone's daughter. You're a soldier. The words landed heavier than any metal I could pin. For the first time, she nodded without pride, without excuses, only with understanding. I turned and walked off the track, leaving her with her sweat, her breath, and her first real victory. He showed up on a gray afternoon, the kind where the sky looked heavy enough to fall. I saw him waiting near the steps of headquarters, hands shoved deep into his jacket, shoulders pulled in as if he was bracing against more than just the wind. For a long moment, I thought about walking past him without a word, the way I had done for years. But something in the stillness made me stop. His eyes met mine, not with anger this time, but with a weight I had never seen before. He cleared his throat, tried to speak, then stopped like the words wouldn't come. No excuses, no stories, no half-truths to cover the silence. Just a man, standing in front of the daughter he had never truly seen. Then he did something I never expected. He straightened his back, clicked his heels together, and raised his hand in a sharp salute. It was not sloppy, not casual. It was the kind of salute drilled into him long ago, delivered with precision and respect. For the first time, he wasn't looking at me as his disappointment. He was saluting Colonel Rachel Morgan. I returned the gesture slowly, letting the silence speak louder than anything I could have said. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need him to rewrite the past. That moment, standing in the cold with his hand raised in acknowledgement, was enough. Not every battle ends with a clear victory. Some battles are quiet, fought in silence, with no applause waiting at the finish line. Others are not about defeating someone else at all, but about proving to yourself that you can keep standing when no one expects you to. For me, honor was never about medals or recognition. It was about showing up, doing the work, and carrying on even when my own father refused to see me. In time, the truth revealed itself, not because I demanded it, but because it could not stay hidden forever. I've learned that some wounds never close, but they can stop defining you once you decide who you are for yourself. Strength is not measured by how loud others cheer, but by how steady you remain when they are silent. And sometimes, the most powerful acknowledgement comes in a single gesture, delivered too late, yet still enough. Have you ever been underestimated but proved your worth in the end? Share your story. Someone out there might need to hear it today.